Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the program Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. And in the program today, we speak to Finance Minister Sostin Gwengwe over the possibility of having quick fixes to the challenges facing the country's economy. And also in the program, the Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority says it is reviewing fuel importation regulations to tame rising prices. We have these and other stories. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome. This is Business Time and my name is William Kumwembe. In our main story in the program today, there appears to be no hope for quick fixes for the country's economy as Malawi is facing with a number of challenges including forex and fuel scarcity. The resurgence of the fuel scarcity, which once was there in April 2012, seemed to have put most motorists in the country in a panic mode trying to find a way out. This comes as the country has been faced with other challenges, including soaring debt levels seen at 5.8 trillion kwacha, about 58.6% of the GDP. The question that everyone is asking out there is, when would these problems come to an end? This is a question I posed to Finance Minister Sostin Gwengwe.
The economy is going through a tough patch, and the patch that we're going through really is to be able to look at our issues of debt and see how best we can address them. We've avoided the temptation of solving a debt problem by committing or contracting more debts, which is what has been happening the past decade in this country, and that has just made matters much worse. We are trying to explore a window, no matter how tight it is, to see if we can deal with our debt problem by using other means other than just getting more and more debts, because what has been happening the past few years is just postponing our problems, and we will reach a point where we can't really postpone anymore. We really must confront this monster head on, and we are really looking at that tight window to see if this can be the moment, no matter how painful it might be, but look at solutions which are more sustainable rather than, for political reasons, sustain or just postponing a problem for a year or two as long as you pass through an election. That has not benefited Malawians, and we are very resilient and resolute to see if we can find a sustainable path out of this whole issue of unsustainable debts for our country. Well, you would know that one's primary aim in a ministry like the one I hold is to grow the economy. And it becomes extremely difficult and challenging when you have issues to do with food supply, when you have issues to do with energy supply, and we have issues of shortages of forex. All this impact on the private sector, and our primary job is to make sure that we salvage the situation in favor of private sector so that private sector starts ticking again. Resolve the energy issue as quickly as possible, and we know that in the next 1 or 2 months we should really be back on our feet energy-wise, and that will translate again to other savings. Fuel demand is going to be lessened, and you would say that if all these things are put together and private sector has started ticking, then we can now start talking of growing the economy and all that. But right now we are at a patch where we need to be more resilient and see how we come out of it. And we are very confident that the plans that are on the table, it's a matter of time, but things should start looking up better, more so that the discussions that we'll be having with our partners, we are reaching a stage where a resolution should be made so that the way forward for Malawi should really come out more clear than the way things are right now.
Now, growing mismatches between forex demand and supply seems to be order of the day in the country, as recent figures from the Economics Association of Malawi, ECAMA, shows that the country needs about $3 billion for imports compared to $1 billion worth of exports the country has been producing. Now, the question is, what needs to be done? Recently, the investors from Zimbabwe, represented by some 15 companies, started discussions with local investors to partner as a way of blossoming trade between these two countries. Would such initiatives help in addressing the challenges the country has been facing as far as Forex is concerned? This is a question our journalist Justin Kweo attempts in this report.
Even though Malawi is not a direct neighbor of Zimbabwe, the two countries share a lot of common things, including bilateral relations. Last year, a National Trade Development and Promotion Organization of the Republic of Zimbabwe, ZimTrade, signed an agreement with Malawi Investment and Trade Center, MITC, for promotion of trade between the two countries. Speaking during the opening, ZimTrade Director of Operations, Semilo Nkala, said intra-African trade has a lot of potential, but it is underutilized compared to African countries trading with regions outside the continent. He said this prompts them to increase trade with African countries, adding that Malawi is a better country because it is within the SADC and COMESA region together with Zimbabwe.
We are on an outward mission to Malawi, where we have taken 15 companies as ZimTrade. We are working together with MITC, whom we signed an MOU with last year when we also were having a solo exhibition in Lilongwe. I think the key thing with the coming in of the AFCFTA, we all know that intra-African trade is about 16%, but if we compare with other intra-regional trade with other regional blocks, we find that for the EU and the Americas is as high as 48 to 60%. So us as ZimTrade, we are targeting to increase our trade with African countries, and also taking into account that we've got a bilateral trade agreement with Malawi, and also we fall under both SADC and COMESA. We are here to increase our trade between the two countries. As Zimbabwe, we've seen trade between Zimbabwe and Malawi increasing. If you look at our 2016 figures, our exports to Malawi were about 17 million, but this has increased to about 32 million.
One of the investors from Zimbabwe is Windmill Private Limited Company, whose marketing executive Wilson Gopoza said they manufacture fertilizer and agriculture chemicals, among others, which are a better target for the Malawi market. He said the company's participation into the workshop is to scout partners whom it can work with and bring the products to Malawi.
We are looking for partners to work with in Malawi. Distributors will distribute our products, be they fertilizers, be they stock feeds, be they chemicals. So that's essentially our brief. That's what we want to achieve currently in Malawi.
An investor from Malawi, who is also part of the organizing committee, Patrick Mbenjere, said they are impressed with the participation of local companies. He added that they have learned that there are a lot of opportunities between these two countries which they can explore, and they can also visit Zimbabwe to showcase products and click deals. Zimbabwe ambassador to Malawi, Nancy Saungweme, applauded captains of industry from the two countries for the initiative.
This trade mission is just trying to deepen the bilateral relation between Zimbabwe and Malawi in terms of business. So a lot of businesses have come here to showcase their products. After showcasing their products, we'll be anticipating for the Malawians to come to Zimbabwe to do the same.
It was revealed during the event that by 2016, Malawi's imports from Zimbabwe amounted to $17 million, and by 2020 it has increased to $32 million, but Zimbabwe imports more from Malawi.
The National Planning Commission, an entity of the government entrusted with the mandate to formulate and ensure implementation of long-term development plans in the country, has said there is need for concerted effort towards attaining the aspirations embedded in the Malawi 2063. The National Planning Commission Director General is Thomas Muntali. He was speaking when the Old Mutual Malawi hosted the conversation series in Blantyre last week. Our journalist Chimwemwe Mangazi has the detail.
During the event, a local young entrepreneur and proprietor of Emosis, a technology firm, Miami Konkoloma, said lack of support for budding entrepreneurs has been one of the major hindrances. He said the youth have innovative ideas but do not have financial support. National Planning Commission Director General Thomas Muntali concurred with Nkoloma, saying some challenges the local economy is facing could be partly attributed to the industry's failure to bring about transformation.
It was clear to say that the government has already identified the gaps. If you look at the first 10-year implementation plan, the catalytic interventions on each of the pillars and enablers are clearly laid out. What is now key is how we can partner now with the private sector to make sure that that is realized. And I mentioned in there that sometimes when we have come up with these plans and we've clearly defined where we need to go, including the value chains, and expect that the private sector will pick it up, sometimes they don't. And the issue now is how does government come in strongly to make sure that the plans that we are having are being executed. We as a country now are planning to move in coming up with the Malawi Development Corporation equivalent. The idea is that we should pick on a few of the strategic sectors to be able to look at a few interventions that we can develop as a nation. Because if we continue to just rely on private sector, then we might wait indefinitely. Now, you get me right, what the Malawi Development Corporation equivalent would do is to do an alliance with the private sector. The point being that once the private sector realizes, along with MDC, profits, then the government will pull out and make sure that the private sector runs off with it by selling the shares of government to Malawians so that we create a cadre of wealthy Malawians. The bottom line really is, let us execute. We cannot keep on talking about plans and this and that, and therefore this conversation is very critical because it talks about partnerships. How do we partner? And partnering around the youth, because if you're looking at Malawi 2063, really at the heart of it, both in terms of formulation and implementation, are the youth themselves. So how does the private sector, government, and all key stakeholders come together to make sure that an investment and entrepreneurial culture is sustained amongst the youth to the end? The depth in which the private sector is working in Malawi is not up to the mark that we expect them to play their role. If you're talking of the private sector being the engine of growth, then we are far from it in Malawi, because our private sector, primarily, if you followed it, they rely a lot of their business from government. A lot of them will do procurements and all these things. If government collapses today, if government doesn't pay arrears, the private sector collapses. In other countries, it's the other way around. If the private sector collapses, government should be collapsing, not the other way around. So what we're saying is, how do we make sure that we support creating a sustainable and vibrant private sector? One way is to make sure that there is government coming in alliance with the private sector to catalyze, to trailblaze in areas like mining, areas like tourism, areas of manufacturing, commercial agriculture, mega farms, so that by the time we are realizing that the investments are paying off, the private sector will be motivated to stay in there. But as it is now, because of the risks that the private sector are seeing, they're not going in there. But if government goes in, it means government is taking the risk of facilitating that the private sector can see the profitability there.
Old Mutual Malawi Group Chief Executive Officer Edith Gia implored private sector players to take a leading role in nurturing innovative ideas.
This is the second event that Old Mutual has organized. We started last year, September. We recognize the power of partnerships. We are of the view that for us to develop this nation economically, for us to develop this nation socially, there is need for private, public, even quasi-public organizations to come together, have a discussion, plan, and agree on a path that can actually help this society. So coming together is very important. We wanted to continue with the work, with the conversation that we started last year. Last year our focus was how do we get out of the COVID-19 pandemic, how do we recover economically. This time what we're saying is, yes, we have come out of COVID, but going through, how do we invest in our youth so that they can contribute effectively? The youth, like you heard from most of the panelists, constitute a significant proportion of this nation. If we can leverage on their energy, if we can leverage on their innovation, we can actually develop this nation and we can achieve our Malawi 2063 vision.
The event focused on the essence of partnerships in achieving development aspirations embedded in the Malawi 2063.
Remember, this is Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. Moving on with the program, the Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority, MERA, says it is reviewing fuel haulage systems for the country to ensure efficiency and ease of pressure in as far as pricing is concerned. This was said during a recent press briefing held by MERA CEO Henry Kachaje. He caught up with our journalist Chimwemwe Mangazi.
The current update that I can give is that as we are indeed all aware, we are facing a challenge in terms of continuous supply of the petroleum products. Mainly at the moment, I think the issue has affected more diesel. So availability of diesel in many parts, specifically in the major cities, has been quite erratic. But I would like to assure the nation and specifically the users of this particular product that all efforts are being taken to make sure that we get back to a situation where availability of these critical and essential products is restored to the original state. As we speak, we have intensified the loadings for petroleum products, specifically for diesel, so that the country gets well restocked. And looking at the volumes that are coming in, that have been loaded in Dar es Salaam and also in Beira, we are quite confident that the erratic supply situation is going to be addressed in the shortest period. Yes, indeed. When we do price reviews, we look at a number of factors, and when we do that kind of analysis, what we realized is that what qualified for a price change was petrol, while paraffin and diesel, the magnitude of change was within 5% and did not warrant for it to have its price reviewed.
Now, in other business news, lack of access to information, markets, and capital seem to continue stifling growth of SMEs in the country. This is according to Roderick Jadaiga, who is the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Institute Executive Director. He was speaking with our journalist, Chimwemwe Mangazi, and he says there is need to invest heavily in SMEs as they form a larger chunk in the private sector.
Yeah, there are a number of programs that we are doing. For example, the coaching and mentoring, where we take entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, and coach them we train them, and then they have a business idea. We develop them into even the stage where they are able to prepare a business plan, a business proposal. And then if they have already taken a decision to do a certain business, we also now take them to somebody who is already experienced and is doing that business, and we attach them to those people for a period so that they can undergo a mentoring and coaching exercise. But on top of the coaching and mentoring, we also provide capacity building and upscaling of their skills in terms of financial literacy, business management, preparation of business proposals, financial proposals, that we also provide. But in addition to that, we also do incubation programs where we have incubation and we teach the people actually to do value addition and do skills that are in relation to value addition for agri products, mineral processing, and even addressing climate issues. So like at Imponera, we have value addition in gemstone, cutting and polishing. We have value addition where we take the raw materials and then make a final product and then go into even the branding exercise. And this now, the incubation centers, under the government program. It's actually to be upscaled in many districts. So you know that we operate from Mponera, but we are now extending beyond that. We have been challenged to develop these centers in most of the districts in the country. So there is a program the government has undertaken, which is going to be for a 5-year program, where we are now starting to build these incubation centers in different places. So Mponera, the Palombe one, has been done and is going to be launched soon. We are launching it on Saturday, and it's actually also value addition, looking at the products and raw materials that are available in those areas. But also the center will be responsible for the training in business management and financial literacy, all these areas that we do. In addition to that, we also partner with donor organizations and run programs that are benefiting youth. I did mention about GIZ, where we have the Agri-Air program. That's the youth in entrepreneurship in agriculture. And then we have a business loop with the GIZ. But we have also some programs that we've been doing with the African Development Bank and NEPAD. For example, the NEPAD program actually looked at the different areas of businesses, where about 157 youth graduated in different areas. And the 24 best students were chosen and given funding, a startup capital of over 1.something million to start business. So 24 were targeted. And some of those youth now have done very well. And we are pleased to say Sylvester Chabuka is one of those students who actually did very well, and he's started his product and it has earned recognition, Wankaka. And then there is also Taonga, who is actually doing cooking oil. So a number of those youth have actually now gone into businesses and they are doing very well. We track all those and even follow them. So far, even under, again, another program that we are doing, we were challenged by the government that we need to ensure that these youth and SMEs have their products certified, so that those products that are certified now can start being found in the supermarkets and can now be sold outside. So a number of products have been certified under the MBS SMEDI program, where the youth and the SMEs are being trained for free on standardization and hygiene, product certification, and they are buying the manuals and whatever, booklets and whatever which they are required to do, and for the certification they only pay 50% of the cost. That's the other program that we are doing. But the other area is where we provide the youth with access to finance or linkages to finance. So we have partners like National Bank Development, NBS Bank, SME, Section, even my banks and the other banks that we are working with in order to ensure that the youth that have very good ideas and can be supported can actually access that finance.
Well, that interview also brings us to the end of today's edition of the program Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. On behalf of the entire production team, my name is William Kumwembe. Always remember, if it doesn't make money, then it doesn't make sense. Stay safe and bye for now.